Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in a little bit more in depth on what it means to heal from a relationship with a narcissist. What makes this relationship so different from all others, so hurtful and so devastating and so damaging from all others. Number one, you have to understand that you have attracted this person into your life for a reason. Nothing really happens on accident. When you talk to people as they mature and they get older, a lot of people do swear by destiny. They do feel that there are the hands of destiny at work. Not to mean that you don't have free will, but that oftentimes a lot of relationships are just fated. They are meant to be, meaning you are meant to have these relationships. You didn't stumble upon them by accident. You didn't stumble on them because you're a terrible person. You didn't stumble upon them because you're stupid or unfamiliar or, naive, ignorant, whatever all the blasphemous words a lot of people like to equate with themselves after they've been through a hurtful relationship. A lot of people who are empathetic tend to attract people who are narcissistic in their lives. Why? It makes a perfect match. It's like hamburgers and cheese. It's like, whatever, it's like, donuts and coffee. It's like cake and ice cream. It's just a perfect combination. I was going to say, it's like Simon and Garfunkel. It's like, any of the great bands that you've heard, the great musics, the great TV shows, it's just the plot is filled with suspense. It's just the recipe for drama. It's the recipe oftentimes for entertainment. It's the recipe for a lot of the relationships that go smooth sailing or hit rough patches or rough waters in your life. It is the relationship with someone who is narcissistic and someone who is empathetic. It's just like Peter, Paul, and Mary. I mean, I'm dating myself from back in the day. A lot of when we had the real music, the real singers, guitar players. I guess it's like Lady and Gaga. I mean, it's just it's a perfect match. It's a perfect storm. When we talk about a relationship with a narcissist and someone who is empathetic, we're talking about, first of all, on the one hand, someone who is like the other hand, the other side. It is oftentimes the polar opposite or very much the opposing force of someone who is empathetic. So someone who is narcissist, just to recap it on the most elemental, essential, and foundational, it's to understand that these people have a pathological sense of self-importance. The feeling of entitlement, grandiosity, that they are God's gift to the world. They're the best thing since sliced bread, that they're privileged, that they are, superior and or better than. And they're always seeking a counterforce to this force. In other words, they're on, trying to either get people on their side, the strength of numbers, whether it's in a family, an organization, etc. I'm relating this to your life, not just someone else's life, but for you to understand that this is what they do. And if you can understand it at that real essence, just sort of that nugget of truth and reality level, you won't fall prey to the fantasy. And there's a lot that is involved in the narcissist. So that, fantastical creation of relationship, meaning that it seems to soar or have the potential to soar above all others. This is your godsend. This is your angel. This is your da 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 da. I mean, we're talking about people who you've had intimate, close relationships with, or business partnerships with, that, they have painted a specific picture for you. But the narcissist, namely, it's to understand that they have a pathological sense of self-importance, which then, predisposes them to pathological lying and, with a lack of empathy for others. So they don't really sort of have they're sort of numbed out. They're sort of unaware. They're unregistered. They're not able to tap in. They're not able to relate to the feelings of others. They're not able to be on that energetic wavelength. It is true, people do have energetic wavelengths that you can connect with. If it's in the heart, if you're living in that heart space, then you're going to connect with others who are living in that heart space. When you feel a real sense of connection. Oftentimes, a lot of people, though, might shy away from this because they are evaluating themselves negatively and they don't think this person could relate to them or that they're not good enough. This is the downfall. This is really the saga, of the person with empathy or codependent who gets in a relationship with someone who's narcissistic. So the narcissist, by virtue of how their personality is constructed, they need others to be a source of supply, a source of support, to feed their ego. The narcissist needs this counterforce. They need others, not just like they need others for companionship, for friendship, for connection, for resonating. They need others as supply to prop up their ego, to bolster their confidence, to fill, to make them whole, if you will. Their ego is not satisfied without this sort of posse or support of others. And so others then will then begin to arrange themselves as supply relationships to this individual. In other words, the narcissist will attract energetically, physiologically, chemically, chemistry-wise, people who are empathetic or who have, this openness or vulnerability to being a support to others. So they fit the bill. In other words, you feel that there's this aliveness, but yet an aliveness that the problem, the downfall is that it can't be sustained and that it's not life oftentimes giving or generating for you also. So there is an imbalance and a cognitive dissonance that's inherent in the composition of the relationship. It is what it is. So for example, the narcissist, like, if we're talking about a jar, their jar, with money in it, like a piggy bank back in the day, I used to collect piggy banks. I used to have all sorts of antique and cool, all sorts of different piggy banks. Back in the day, we didn't have the debit cards. We used cash, very much when I was a young person. So if you wanted to save, you might be saving, maybe you were a babysitter like me. I've been babysitting since I was 10, 11, 12. I mean, back in the day, we would take care of little infants. I mean, I would be in charge of 6-month-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and I was, 11, while the parents went out for dinner, went to a movie, went to a show. I mean, we didn't have all the channels anyway, back in the day. So anyway, you are there to essentially be their support. You are there if you have an ability to, or a joy to be supportive of others. In other words, to applaud them, to be their, to maybe you are appreciative of their skill, their talent, their personality. I mean, so you might have this genuine thing, which is awesome. But yet in a narcissist, someone who is lacking of empathy, they don't understand others. They don't have that ability, but they need others to be a support. They need others to propagate and prop up their ego. Give them the compliments. Give them, give them of themselves. A lot of people, end up being like groupies to this person. They end up having, using sex as a way to communicate if they can't communicate. They end up, giving all of their time, getting sucked into their Instagram page, their Facebook. I mean, people have hours and hours just thumbing through other people's photographs and trying to indulge themselves in other people. So I'm trying to explain really a lot that we have a conjuncture at in society today. So, as a jar, as we were saying, so you have to understand that, your self-value, your value of yourself, as well as that of a narcissist, can be equated to like a piggy bank, or like if you had a mason jar, or something that you was clear and that you would put your money in to save for a future date. Some people used to use an envelope. But if you equate that with like every time that you're giving the narcissist value and you lack of value, so not investing in yourself or relationships that are supportive of you, you end up being, depleting yourself or feeling a depletion of value, feeling less than, literally like a jar that is empty, like a piggy bank that is empty, like a credibility jar that is empty, like a trust jar that is empty, if you will. So that when you are wanting to go out and pursue relationships, jobs, opportunities, if you don't have that, if you feel that that jar is empty, you feel that you're handicapped, you feel that you are missing something, and that you're looking for that external locus of control to put something in. In other words, you feel empty, vapid, just sort of not enough, not present enough, don't have what it takes. So you feel this lack, this deficit within. We're talking about psychology. We're talking about relationship issues. We're talking about getting along. We're talking about homeostasis and balance. And so a relationship with a narcissist is looking for others to fill up their credibility jar. They're needing that others, to complement them, to fill up. They have a lot of jars. I mean, you can think of it like a jar symphony where basically, this. I mean, they have many jars that need to be filled up. And that's why they almost feel, this antithesis or absence of love and true connection, because they can't really appreciate others the way that, others are appreciated with empathy. To feel truly appreciated, you have to feel that someone, gets who you are and what you've actually done. In other words, I appreciate you baking those cookies. I appreciate you bringing over those chocolates. I appreciate that bottle of wine. I appreciate you for the thoughtfulness, taking the time, doing and putting this on your list, all these different things. So to feel appreciated, needs to be a real thing. The narcissist, oftentimes, they don't really have this appreciation of others. It's just kind of like what they expect. They feel that they are entitled to. They're entitled to others' attention. They are entitled to others' laughter. They're entitled to other people's gifts. That they think and want, others to be supportive of them, and this is what their ego requires. So the empath, and this is really, what I want to talk about in the video, is that this perfect match with someone who is empathetic is highly empathetic. So you have to understand, if you are sensitive to the energy and thus the needs of others, i.e., you're the first to volunteer, let me laugh at your jokes, let me compliment you on your cooking, let me compliment you on your house, let me compliment, compliments are good. I'm not saying that. We're talking about a lack of balance when it's always about the other person, or largely. I mean, we're talking 90-10, and not, not that the ideal has to be 50-50. It might be 60-40. It might be 70-30, and then, back and balanced. But there is a lack of balance, off balance, instability back and forth, uneven, wobbly, relationship that eventually becomes worm-like, i.e. at the rock bottom, with a relationship between a narcissist and a codependent, someone who is abundant in apathy, in empathy. And so to understand, just as we have a spectrum of people who are narcissistic, who are malignant, really pathological, and meaning they're creating more suffering, they're creating more hurt, they're creating more fear, more trepidation, more intimidation, more exploitation. Just as we have, people either on personal, professional, financial, physical assets, meaning even resources of a company, resources of an ecology, resources of a economy, human, physical resources, natural resources. So just as there are people on one end very much, getting towards the severe, hurtful, damaging, destruction, of narcissism, which then we get into really an absence completely of conscience, like we see in the psychopathy. We've got also that spectrum of people who are in the empathy, who are, altruistic, who are selfless, who are, devoid, really sort of ego, oftentimes by a value proposition that they always want to put others first, that they were taught that, they learned that, or to be supportive of authority, and people pleasers, meaning that if there were others, that they would always deflect to them. They would always defer to them. Even in school, why don't you go ahead and answer the question? Why don't we go ahead and read your paper? Why don't we go ahead and listen to your viewpoint? In fact, let them earn, the role, let's deflect to them, So they weren't oftentimes very competitive. They didn't feel that they had what it takes to go up against, to compete, to push themselves. In other words, they took the second fiddle, the third fiddle, and then no fiddle. Eventually, they talked themselves out of self-esteem, or they learned to follow that, what I call negative orderly direction thinking, feeling, and behaving, where they just completely absolve themselves of any desire, any objective, any ambition. They have just sort of let it go and felt that they were, nothing special, that to be special, they had to connect with or be a support to others. And oftentimes that person was a narcissist who, because of their lack of empathy, then will be prone to exploit, take advantage, and use others. It's a perfect match. It's the chemistry works. You've got someone who wants to give, you've got someone who wants to take. Now, these can all be well and good. We're not saying that, but we're talking about what happens when people end up feeling misused, exploited, taken advantage of, given the short end of the stick, and lied to, and the pathology. So they don't see it coming, because oftentimes the pathology of the narcissist is to hide, is to be secretive, to feel so entitled that they don't have to clue you in. They don't have to communicate. They don't have to honor or respect or be truthful. And so do you see how that this can be a perfect coming together? And in future videos, I'm going to talk a little bit about how and why this can be really even more hurtful and damaging and destructive, and cause this sort of rift and separation that oftentimes leads to a lot of heartache, heartbreak, and need to kind of go into a real in-depth exploration and how to recover from that and get whole and get strong and feel good and okay and happy about things. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, here today. I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Have a beautiful day.